again. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here with us today. Thank you, Zach, for being here with us for our very first event at Neil Centre. Vincent and I, Vincent's over there, he's my co-founder. We just arrived here two months ago, and we're slowly transforming the space from an old agricultural hotel into what will be a centre for a new humanity. So next time you come back, it will probably look very different again. And a centre for a new humanity, many centres for a new humanity and a new earth are so needed now, places that we can gather together, not just to experience beauty and comfort and a well-being space, but to go deeper than that, because we seek out well-being spaces because of everything that is in our lives that is against our well-being. And what we want to do here is to facilitate spaces and experiences that allow us to peel through those layers and confront those things, which is sometimes painful. It takes us to the edge of our comfort zone to confront those stories and those projections and the way that we're also allowing our lives to be a certain way, and to reclaim our authorship over our lives so that we can co-create a more beautiful shared reality together on this earth. And these are themes that Zach, of course, speaks into so eloquently with his profound scientific knowledge, spiritual truth, and the heartfelt beauty with which you speak and share. So it's, for us, it's just so perfect how it came together. This is our opening event. We didn't realize it was going to happen like this, and Zach was like, I'm coming to visit you guys, and said, oh, we can do an event. And we were like, okay, perfect. We didn't even have to look for it to happen, it just came to us. So, Zach, from the depths of our hearts, Vincent and I, and everybody that's working with us, thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, making this real, making this an event. Also, it's just me talking in an empty room. So, awesome. Thank you so much, Karen and Vincent and the whole team here. What an epic team. There's an incredible group of people here, and that includes all of you. I'm super impressed and humbled when an Instagram post goes out or something, and then suddenly everybody's like a hard yes, and you change your schedules and you make the drive here and you provide a whole afternoon of your time to co-create something together. So I'm just humbled and honored to co-create with you, and excited to see what comes through. An incredible array of faces here. I'm always amazed by human faces. We're such an interesting species. I often wonder if elephants have the same experience. Do they look around and be like, oh my God, there's so many different elephant faces? I kind of feel like they're all elephants when I look at them. Maybe they have a slightly different smile, but they're a freaking elephant. But I look around a room of humans, I'm like, alien, human, what the hell is that? I have no idea. Like, there's just so much difference that we carry into this world. And I think that's what makes humanity so magnificent, is we are the penultimate melting pot of genomics on this planet. And I get very intrigued by that because it starts to help us melt down our definition of human, which we love to define as a species. But as you guys know probably, and have heard me say many times, we're actually, every single moment of science now, we are discovering deeper and deeper and deeper that there is no species called human. There's a complex ecosystem that's expressing itself in a general container that might be called human, but it's a multi-species experience. It's a multi-species expression. As you've probably heard me say, there's no more complex biodiversity on the planet than the colon of a human. Every cubic centimeter of your colon holds more life force and more life diversity than any other sector of nature by logarithms. including the colons of other animals. And so you look at the mammals and you think, well, they're all super intelligent, but you can go to a dolphin, you can go to a dog, and they have a fraction of the biodiversity of a human gut. And as we've started to be able to do live microscopy to gut linings, we've discovered that, oh my God, we thought the gut and the skin were like these incredible boundary events where outside was non-human and inside was human. But as we've detailed out the microscopic neurologic environment of the gut lining, we've discovered that it is nothing like a boundary. In fact, there's billions of neurons that jet out from the gut lining into the milieu of the microbial diversity that is the human gut. Most of that in the colon. And I find that interesting because there's so much stress in the colon of humans today. If there's a ground zero of the chronic disease epidemic and what each of you and I feel in a day of stress, it's coming from there. And so to be human is to be an ecosystem and start to feel that ecosystem fail, and our souls and our whole planet start to ache. There's a deep aching inside of the human gut right now of, my God, we're losing the whole purpose of the container. And that sets up an appropriate grief response of, whoa, what have we done? What humanity have we undermined by ascribing to a whole system of antibiotics over the last 70 years? Heralded as the greatest breakthrough in medical science in the 1940s, was penicillin. And ever since penicillin, it's just been every few years another antibiotic, another super drug on the market that is even more annihilating to the biodiversity within the human container. And for that, we've been steadily losing our humanity. And so when we look around at the world right now, many horrors have happened over human history. I don't want to over-dramatize the moment we're in now, so I think humans have been long at the horrors that we inflict. But fascinating to see how far we can diminish ourselves to the point of our own extinction through this loss of biodiversity in us. And so there's this opportunity for us to start to reframe our own disease or dis-ease. Let's start reframing that as simply a loss of life force. It's a loss of diversity. That's all. We're just losing our soil system. And I can look around me and I can be like, well, that person's, narcissistic, and that person's bipolar, and that person's got cancer, and that person's really toxic. We have all of these judgments to everything around us. But if we just start seeing it as, wow, there is a fundamental collapse of the life force of Mother Earth within every human being today. And therefore, what only comes forward is our inhumanity. The humane nature within a human is the expression of nature. When your voice and your hands are the expression of the creativity of a planet, you only do good. And we call that a keystone species. Wherever you go, there's more biodiversity, there's more beauty. And one of my favorite phrases that I've heard out there is that the only thing that humans have done that has done no harm is our art. And I think that really speaks to it. Right?
I work with art, thank you.
Oh, you got a fan behind you there.
Yeah.
See if we can do that without feedback. I might just be able to swallow the mic. What does that feel like there for everybody? Is that too much? No? Okay. Yeah, so the only thing that humans have done that has done no harm is our art. And so by that, we can start to recognize that it is actually the creative force within us that we were designed for. And when we step into right relationship with the nature around us and within us, we become this beautiful creative force. And I marvel at human ingenuity. Like, elephants are wonderful. And they are great teachers. But elephants did not, in 20 years, build the skyline of Dubai. What the hell is that? If you've ever landed there, it's like, wait, that thing came out of the desert because of the ingenuity and the productivity of humans? Like when I hang out with myself, I don't feel like I could collaborate on something that grand, that could just come to be. There was no city, and now there's a metropolis of these glittering, imaginative, spectacular expressions of big penises that we put into the sky. It's just like, what a strange, beautiful species we are. And yet we feel compelled to do these things for a long time. You go back into the medieval times when nothing was working in the human systems, and we built these unbelievable cathedrals that we don't even know how to build anymore. These swirling designs of light and energy inside of spaces with these ceilings that literally reach for the sky. And you can walk through any great skyscraper in Dubai, and you will not find a ceiling as magnificent as you will some of the original Gothic cathedrals. In their scale, in their capacity to hold space, in their energetic movement. We are a spectacular species. And it's very easy to get very frustrated with us. And I am at pretty much my peak frustration with humans right now. I'm so close to wanting to go, And for that, I get these moments where I'm like, wow, like if I can see through that wall of pain and the wall of suffering and the wall of insanity, what spectacular species? What's going on here? What is nature actually creating through us? And so I think that's our next chapter, is to come into right relationship with nature, which is I am your hands. In fact, I am your womb.
Yes. Yeah.
Create through me what you would have here for your own glory. Let me attribute all creativity and all curiosity to you, Mother Earth, that is speaking through this container. Let me strive there. Let me give respect and reverence where it is due. And then we would let go of things like intellectual property and fences for the name of conservation and antibiotics for the name of health and chemotherapy for the name of life. We'll simply behave differently when we see ourselves in right relationship, when our mind can put ourselves into the right framework of what are we? We're the largest container for biodiversity, therefore intelligence that this earth has expressed for herself so far. And what have we done more than anything else in this last 150 years? We have put stress on her system. And that's her working through you, humans. That's interesting to me. And it's helped me reframe what 10, 15 years ago was a really pissed off activist of like, freaking Monsanto, poisoning the shit out of my children and my grandchildren, poisoning my earth. Like, how dare you pour that stuff into 4 billion pounds a year for $60 billion of profit? Screw you. I was so frustrated. But as I've gone into more and more awareness of what death looks like and what comes after it, it changes your perspective on victim and perpetrator. And it's certainly, you start to lose your vindictive and altruistic belief that you're the savior. Because when we look back in 2,000 years, and some contingent of human biology made through an eye of a needle to re-express itself into some sort of new biology, and the earth is in an explosive regrowth. More trees, more biodiversity, more grasslands, more life force per cubic centimeter on the surface of Earth than any time in 4 billion years will happen soon. Could be in the next few years if we decide to go into right relationship, but it will certainly happen within the next couple hundred or a couple thousand years at the longest. The most vibrant Earth. And the reason for that is because of two extraordinary industries collaborating. And the first will be the oil industries, which will have done more for the green earth than any other time, any other technology, any other event in human or planetary history will have been done by the oil companies. because they have, like ants, been inspired, like ants, to dig deep into the earth and start to bring resources that were out of the respiratory cycle of earth and put it back in play. Fossil aquifers of oil are unbreathable by biology. Those are soil systems that have been locked away from the life force energy of the planet. And every oil well drilled is bringing life force potential back to the surface. Every gasoline car that drives is putting that CO2 back into the respiratory cycle of an earth that loves to breathe. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's disruptive and problematic for our savior mentality. Of we're the ones that are awake, and we're going to take down those oil companies, and we're going to build solar panels to do green energy. Well, Mother Earth does not breathe anything in a solar panel. The waste from a solar panel simply poisons her soils. We should build wind power. To do that, China's had to buy up the entire Amazon rainforest with all of the rights to their balsa wood. And they are cutting down every single balsa tree in South America right now to build with the blades of windmills. The earth does not breathe the plastics and metals of windmills that go back into landfills within 15 to 20 years of construction. 15 to 20 years. We have misunderstood human industry because we keep defining it outside of nature. If you go to the definition of nature in the Oxford English Dictionary, it says that it is everything in the firmament of the earth. It is minerals, it is plants, it is animals, as opposed to humans or anything humans have made. So not only did we write ourselves out of nature, we wrote ourselves into opposition, and then we believed everything we've ever created is in opposition to nature. And so we look around and be like, what a disaster humans are. Everything we're doing is a disaster. Plastics, my God, is such a disaster. So 10 years ago, I was looking at, we had found out that nature had a solution to glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. So that was my lab in 2012, 13. We were working in fossil soils and trying to extract these carbon molecules that looked a bit like the chemotherapy I used to make. And I was very compelled by the discovery that there was medicine in the soil, because through all of my drug development years, we were all looking towards the plants for the medicinal stuff. And the idea that the soil had something more intelligent than the plants blew my mind. And so I was super excited when I found this family of molecules. I was like, this is going to change everything. And I had no idea just how it was going to change everything, but it has changed everything I think about anything is coming out of these carbon molecules in soil. And in that journey, discovered that the fossil soils planted in the deep recesses of the earth 60 million years ago carried the antidote to glyphosate that would kill her soils today. Mother Earth created the antidote to a poison 60 million years ago that would be used to kill her soils today. You start to really sit on that, and you really start to think through that non-linear intelligence, non-linear planning. I'm going to put in my soils today something that will be relevant in 60 million years when I go through my next extinction. She already knew what her next extinction looked like. The human mind is what it takes to create this three-dimensional belief of time. Nature is looping, and she's innovating. She's seeing every possible outcome because you think the colon is intelligent. What if you could back up and every single data point that every single microbe in every single inch of soil within every single human was accessible to you? That's what Earth is. Earth is a closed loop biologic system of radical connectivity. Earth is a radical system of interconnected intelligence that is beyond our imagination. When we sit here and marvel at ChatGPT, Earth must just either wither or just laugh, because she's like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, humans. You built a machine that takes all of your words that have nothing to do with nature left in them, and then it puts together the words in such a way that it echoes back to you your false beliefs, and you sit there in awe. That is not intelligence. That is not intelligence. That's an echo chamber for an egoic, abstract reality. And of course it feels good to be reassured when you put in your stuff to ChatGPT and it comes back sounding intelligent. You're like, thank goodness, we're so smart. You're like, I knew it. I knew I didn't need a lawyer. I just needed to talk to this thing for a few minutes, and there's my legal document. And then a lawyer looks at it and it's like, this thing's like half wrong, and it's made up things that don't even exist. That's not even a real legal argument. But we get so convinced of like, wow, we've cracked the code on our intelligence. The intelligence of this system that we live within is so beyond our imagination. Each one of you has roughly 70 trillion cells, which is a hard number to wrap your head around. I don't even know what a million is. So a trillion, I have no freaking clue. But to put it into a way in which I can think about that number is that each of those cells has a meter of DNA, roughly from the tip of my finger to the tip of my nose. 1 meter of DNA is wrapped around these tiny little microscopic structures that we call histones, which are basically the core of what then becomes a yarn ball as you wrap a meter of DNA into a tight ball so that it can fit inside of the nucleus, inside of a cell, that the nucleus as its entirety is 20 times smaller than the circumference of a human hair. And you're inside of that circumference as these tiny little bundled histones that would then make an X or a Y chromosome. And so you have this tightly bundled balls, many balls of yarn that are there. So you have a meter of DNA that's all wrapped up tight so that it can fit into this tiny space. But the problem is you can't reach any of the genetic information in there when it's wrapped up on a yarn ball. And so you actually have to unwrap the yarn ball to the point where you can find the gene that you're looking for so that a microRNA or messenger RNA can be transcribed, be written off the surface of the DNA, and then that little messenger leaves the nucleus, goes out to the cytoplasm, and then starts lining amino acids up against the RNA strand that's carrying that. Meanwhile, then the DNA has wrapped back up into its appropriate bundle. Who is sending the directions? What? Like, how does a bundle of DNA be like, okay, that's 17 layers deep over here on the right side, 15 layers deep, messenger RNA comes in, 200 molecules have to bond to the surface of that moment to decide whether that protein is going to be transcribed. It's the most regulated thing in biology, is taking DNA out into a protein. And so this message that there's a virus that's taking over humanity is the biggest BS science story that's ever been created, and scientists took it somehow as reasonable. I got so frustrated with my entire industry that I was like, this is like 50-year-old science at best. Maybe 50 years ago we thought viruses were attacking us, but we have so many decades, tens of millions of peer-reviewed journal articles describing the complexity of the decision to take a DNA strand or an RNA strand into a protein. It is so regulated that it is absolutely impossible that something takes over unintentionally. When you take up a decision to produce a protein from a strand of DNA or RNA, it is a coercive, cooperative, gentle process of co-creation that happens in the quantum field in millionths of a second. That whole unbundling that I described in the RNA, it happens within a millionth of a second. I can't even do anything today to describe what a miracle you are. There is no way that I can tell you enough information that can really get this into the essence of just how ridiculous this situation is, that you keep materializing every millionth of a second as you. Shatters all understanding. So what are we? What are you? What'd you come here to do? You had to come here to be part of an imagination of a system far more intelligent than a single human. Part of a system that's far more grandiose than a single soul could create. And so wouldn't it be neat to be a soul that could end up on a planet that has the life force capacity to concentrate light energy such that there would be life? And then that life would iterate until it reaches the life force energy of a human that's capable of holding the diversity and intelligence of what you've become, which is Mother Earth herself speaking through a single neurology. It's magnificent in scale. And so it would be really nice to think, yeah, our purpose is to come here, wonder at the beauty, and then do beautiful things. Create our art, create the music, create all of the beauty. That would be a lovely story. And I yearn for that on so many levels. And then we would completely fail if we did that. Because this universe does not need more beauty. This universe doesn't need something to come along to create beauty. She is so magnificent in everything she's already done. She's not waiting for me to put a brush to a canvas to claim that I've created something beautiful. Why did we come with this level of intelligence? Why did we come with this level of intelligence? What's happening? I got a really clear message when I was on a pilgrimage. I was 49 and was, for the first time in my life, looking forward to a birthday. For some reason, 10 years before, I decided that was going to be my great birthday. I was going to actually care about my 50th birthday. And that's so arbitrary. It's like such a stupid thing to even think about. But nonetheless, it seemed important. So I made all these grandiose plans. First, I was going to have like this great destination birthday party, invite all of my friends, and just have just an absolute ball. And then as my 49th year arrived and I started thinking about that, I was like, I don't actually enjoy throwing parties, and I really don't enjoy being with lots of people for lots of periods of time where I'm responsible for creating their experience. Like, that sounds miserable. That was a terrible plan. So then I was like, all right, I'm gonna go alone to Africa for a month. That's actually my 50th birthday. Then that completely fell apart, and it was just stubborn. And then I went on this pilgrimage, and I got this clear message: you're supposed to be in Israel in your 50th year. Oh, I've never been to Israel. It's always been interesting to me. So I got tickets and planned this, 4 weeks in Israel, and was going to arrive on October 12th, and then October 7th happened. And I thought, oh, this is probably just a skirmish. Maybe it's made-up media. I don't even know if it's real. So I didn't change my plans. And then I got a message on the 11th from LL Airlines saying that they were canceling the flight and that they would give me a flight voucher and be welcome to come back at a later date. I was like, that's so strange. I got such a clear message, but it just kind of went on my back burner. Ended up doing nothing really for my 50th birthday, because by that time I had, like every other birthday, forgot that it was relevant to me. Moved on, and then suddenly got a phone call about 6 months later that with an invitation to go to Israel with this Kabbalistic rabbi that I had never met before. And I was like, wow, that's really strange, because I had got this flight voucher, and the dates that he was going was only 10 days out, but it happened to be an 8-day period that was between travel events that were there, and so there was a way I could get there. And so I said yes. And I was lecturing on all the stuff I just told you about. All of the beauty, all of the intelligence, all of the miraculous nature of our creative capacity. And I landed in Israel April that year, and the war was very active. I came off the flight, and as always, there's Israeli passport line and all other passport line. And there was 0 people in the all other passport line, and I walked straight to the one guy standing there, and I handed him my passport, and for whatever reason I was dressed in black that day, black shirt, black pants, and black Patagonia backpack. And even I was like, I probably look like something from Black Rock, like I look like Special Forces or something. This doesn't feel like a tourist. And he's like, why are you here? What are you here for? And I was like, well, I'm here for tourism. He's like, there's nothing open here. Like there's no tourists here right now. I said, well, I got this invitation from this rabbi, and I tried, and the more I described it, the more ridiculous it got. Because I didn't even know why I was going at that point. He finally stamped my passport, and I walked through and into a very empty Israel. And I ended up alone on the Mount of Olives, usually 40,000 visitors a day. And I ended up alone in Mary Magdalene's chapel, which was the being that had told me I needed to be in Israel. And my Christy is here. But what she meant is you need to be there alone. And so I had an extraordinary experience there, and then I went to the Jordan River, where there's a story of Christ being baptized by John the Baptist, and I walked out into that water, and I was neck deep alone in the Jordan. The mud is so deep, like it's the strangest clay there that runs in that river, and the water is clay, like it's so thick, it's more like standing in molasses or something. It's a strange sensation. And this woman started calling down from above the area of the Jordan. There was like a kind of lookout space, and she said she was part of the little group that I was in, where there was like 6 of us traveling together. And she called down and was like, "Can you baptize somebody?" I was like, "What?" "There's a woman here who's just in tears. She can't find anybody that'll baptize her, and she's come from India to be baptized in the Jordan." It looks like trying to figure out, like, how do I check in with Source on this? Like, I'm allowed to do this. Like, it's interesting. I'm used to. I was like, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. And so moments later, this tiny little Indian woman came down. She's in her late 70s. And I climbed out of the river, and I was covered in mud, and she didn't know how to swim, and so she clung on to me like a little child and was holding me, and I walked her back down into the Jordan. And I told her that the original Lord's Prayer is much different than we're taught it, and because she was basically saying parts of the Lord's Prayer to me in broken English. And I said what I could do is I could do an English version of the actual prayer as it was spoken in Christ's language, and it really speaks to the mother rather than the father. And we could do the prayer to the mother. And she says, "That sounds great." And so I'm like knee deep in this weird mud, holding this tiny little woman. Her level of faith was enough to correct any lack in me. She was so clear on why she was there. And she was so clear on what needed to happen that I knew I could just surrender myself out of the equation and let her and Source do their work. And so a prayer came through, and I dunked her in the Jordan. She was holding on to me so tight underwater. She came up out of the water with this look that I don't think I'll ever forget, but it is the most childlike face that you will ever see on somebody. And her eyes were just popping, just so much light force coming through her eyes. Mm-hmm. And she says, she just burst out crying initially. I guess she cried there, staring in my face for a few minutes, and then she says, where did all of the weight go? And so then I was just crying so hard. And I didn't have an answer for her specifically other than just to witness her. And I said, "I can see your child. I can see what's left after you let all that weight go." And not much else was said, and I climbed out of the Jordan and put her on the shore. And the next morning, I was taken to ground zero of the kibbutz that was attacked on October 7th. Up until that moment, I was really sure that we were here to do something magnificent together. I was really sure that we're so close, because things like this are happening. That must mean we're so close to our moment of transformation where we really start to do no harm, where we really step into right relationship with nature. and then spent 10 hours going from house to house in 2,000 homes that were in that kibbutz. And by the end of it, I realized we are not here to do our art. We are here to suffer. We are a machine of suffering. We create suffering on a level that nobody even can comprehend. On the floor of that place, every house, are handprints of babies crawling to their mother through the blood to lay on her chest while she dies. Each of those houses had bomb shelters in them, and the children had largely been locked away in the bomb shelters where the parents, with the machine guns that they had been issued by the Israeli government, sat outside and tried to protect their home and died outside the door. And rockets were used to bust through those doors and through the walls of those bomb shelters until everybody was had. Mothers were raped while their children watched, and then their children were killed in front of them. And then they were kidnapped and taken somewhere else, and then returned pregnant 4 months later. And the whole time, there's Israeli tank fire going overhead. And I'm watching the devastation house to house of small arms fire and little shoulder-fired rockets. And it's a horror that I can't even measure. And then I'm feeling the tank fire of Israeli tanks going off all day, shooting into Gaza. Israeli tanks are a technology specific to Israel. Nobody else has ever been able to recreate that technology. When the munitions come out of an Israeli tank, it rips the air. It is the most horrific sound you've ever heard. And so trying to put the scale of the horror of the genocide on the other side of those tanks into proportion through what I was seeing in just 2,000 little homes was too much for a human psyche. And the whole time I'm watching American bulldozers and troops building a 6-lane highway straight from that moment, right where the kibbutz starts is the Gaza border, the fence line, and it's Americans that are building a highway from Israel straight out to the Mediterranean to build an American military port for the first time in the history of the Mediterranean. And the dark, dark reality was setting in as this is my country doing both these sides. My country has armed both these sides, and we are the ones with a purpose here. It shattered my psyche so thoroughly. Shattered any sense of goodness of humans so thoroughly that it's reframed everything since. We are here to suffer. We have spent all of our ingenuity and intelligence to create more magnificent ways to create deeper levels of suffering. And we've done it for tens of thousands of years. We have perfected war. We have perfected it. After the oil companies, the second largest contributor to the future of this planet is the chemical agriculture companies. Bayer and Monsanto have done more for the future of the earth than any other industry because they have poisoned this earth to such a degree that every single bacteria, fungi, and large-scale biologic system on earth is producing viruses. Viruses are the imagination of nature that have not yet expressed themselves. The virome, the database of the viruses of the earth, are simply the genetic information that the earth will use next. The virome is the collective intelligence of a future yet unbirthed.
But okay.
Every time a species is put under extinction level stress, it starts to respell its genetics, hoping that it will potentially create something that could help the biology that will actually survive. I think that's magnificent. Biology at the cellular level absolutely does not see any endpoint. As soon as it's starting to die, it says, what could come next? I get to participate in that. I'm going to respell my genome, and I'm going to exude it through my sweat, through my breath, through my urine, and in my feces back into the earth, back into the air I breathe, so that all of the potential of the future that I could contribute to might know something new. The biodiversity of the future will owe its extreme transformation to the stress that the chemical industries put it under. If this is right, and the earth of the future created a species to destroy her soils and everything that would live in them so that she could reimagine herself, why did we perfect the biggest industry that we ever created, which is war? What is that doing for the cosmos? Why are we so good at genociding each other? Isn't that similar to a chemical industry that's contributing to the future of a universe? Is it possible that nature has had to engineer a species that thinks itself separate from herself, such that it would become so frightened in the sense of abandonment that it would act in such a horrific way so that she could do something more grand? Would she plan her own demise through a terrified fear, guilt, shame paradigm of a species so that she could reimagine herself even bigger and better? Is it possible that we came here to suffer? This is interesting to me now. It's the only way I can make sense of it, else I just hate humans too much. Else I just have too much rage inside of me and I want to burn the whole fucking thing down. I don't want a single fucking human to survive next week if we came here to do beauty, because we are not fucking doing it. We're doing the opposite. But if I reframe that, as I've learned to, for the very industries that I thought I was supposed to be against, then suddenly it starts to make more sense. And suddenly I can see beauty in the horror. So let's take a big, big macro view. This is very painful to do, because you guys have somebody who's being directly affected by a genocide somewhere. And that's what you feel when you go into Israel. Obviously, both of these are highly damaged populations that have both survived genocides in the last 50 years, 70 years. Obviously, there's just so much human trauma pent up in the genetics here that this is our only option. And then you back up and you're like, that's the whole freaking species. Has so much genetic trauma stored in it from the last 4,000 generations that we can't do anything but create more suffering. So where's the miracle in that? Because I believe Einstein was right. Everything is a miracle or nothing's a miracle. We cannot pick and choose. We can't say that piece of music is beautiful and then look at war and say that is not. We can't look at genocide and say that's not a miracle, but then say that peace is a miracle. It's very difficult and a very new experience for me to live in a body where I finally got to feel fully, step into fully feeling like the victim for a long time. Had many victim stories. Like the savior for decades, trying to save the planet, trying to save humans, trying to save every one of my patients from cancer, trying to save everything. I knew him so well. But it's only these last couple months where I finally stepped into perpetrator and really sat with that. Like, okay, there's a group of people on earth that have decided that I am the devil incarnate and I am the perpetrator they've been looking for, and they're here to crucify me. And for a long time, I was just like, had a victim story about that. For a year and a half, I was like, well, I must be the victim of this attack, this public attack to try to annihilate my character or whatever. And finally, in fire ceremony in South Africa, the whole thing flipped on me, and I was staring into the whole thing, and it was just like this gift sitting there in the flames that I had just lit by friction. These flames were coming off this bundle of straw in my hands, and it was suddenly, what was there in front of me was the gift of this discovery that I was the perpetrator. And so I stepped fully into it in that moment, and I became the perpetrator. And I was so shocked that it felt exactly like being the victim. And it felt exactly like being the savior. It's not the victim polarity to the perpetrator, polarity to the savior. That trinity is the same damn thing. And that was difficult for my psyche to take in again. How can the child dying in a bomb shelter be the same thing as the one that's busting through the walls to kill it? How is that the same thing? It makes no sense in my desire to have a judgmental frequency of good and bad, evil. It's the same thing as a difficult thing to swallow. The victim, perpetrator, savior, triad, that trinity is the same thing. It is a single wound that comes from the abandonment of nature. Our belief that we are abandoned by nature has led to this triad of behaviors that continues to perpetrate great horror. So why would that happen? Why are we doing it so well? Why have we perfected that triad? What are we doing? And it started to become possible that we came here to suffer, because we are the only species, perhaps, that knows how to take suffering into joy. We may be the only one. Which of you have had an experience with the benevolence and pure love of a dog? Has anybody felt unconditional love from a dog? A couple of you?
Yes.
Most of you, right? It's an insane thing. The condition of the dog doesn't actually know suffering. It's actually just like, doesn't give a shit what you did today. Like, you were a really asshole boss today. Dog's like, you're fucking amazing. I can't believe you. Rub myself all over you and lick your face. Oh my God, dry food again? Oh my God. Oh my God. Thank you so much. It's full of all these chemicals and shit. Oh, thank you so much for this bowl of crap. Oh my God. And you were really good that day. And you just did a kick-ass job. And the dog is completely oblivious to it. Because there's only one frequency. Have you had the blessing of sitting in front of a wild animal before and feeling the benevolence of a giraffe or an elephant, a wolf? It's one frequency. The wolf did not wake up that morning suffering with its sense of, I really was a shitty wolf yesterday. I really did such a bad job, and nobody really likes me. That other wolf is really liked, but I'm just a... No, it's one frequency. It's a fucking wolf, and it'll bite your face off. No, it's just one frequency. It's one frequency. Has anybody had the blessing of being in front of a non-human entity that's visited you? It might be, make up your word, angel, alien, whatever. When that happened, did you feel something that was changing every 10 minutes? Or did you feel something that was so permanently in its frequency that I had absolutely no doubt about the reality I lived in? That's what I experienced from it. Truth. light, love, unconditional love. I had a visitation from the god of cacao, the embodiment of whatever we call cacao in a deity form. This thing was emanating so much fucking power out of it. And it was some sort of frequency of unconditional love. And it was medicine at a high level frequency. And it was just vibrating there. And had always been cacao. And whatever we call Mary Magdalene, that's the energy that has transformed my life more than anything. And I am sure that is not a woman. That thing is fucking magnificent. And that is the ultimate pure essence of the lover, with absolutely no expectations or judgment. Just fucking pure, intense, sensual, sexual love for you being alive right now. And it's one frequency of just unconditional love, which feels like grief. Which feels like grief. And I sat in that torrent of grief in the presence of what I would call Magdalene. I was just in awe of the frequency and its destructive force. Grief can take apart anything. And that was the first time I felt like somebody knew what it felt like when I walked through that kibbutz. That's a being that knows this frequency. And so I must have been that day not experiencing horror, but actually unconditional love. Reframed it for me. The unique thing that humans do is change our frequency radically every single day, multiple times. I wake up and I'm like 5 years old. I'm like, fucking awesome. It's light out. I'm so curious to see what's outside. Oh my God, I'm breathing again. By 2 o'clock, I am suicidal, ready to go homicidal. I'm just a fucking mess. Like this goddamn human experience. What the fuck is going on? And the Pleiadian is just sitting there, love. And I'm like, and that's why the Pleiadian says that is the most important thing on the universe, and we are here to care for that. Because there's only one species that can take pure suffering into joy in a single day. And when you do that, you will change the balance between dark and light in a universe that is perfectly 50-50. It would take so little light to come out of darkness to tip the cosmos to a completely different expression. It would take so little transformation of dark to light to tip the balance to a completely different frequency of the universe. That is what you came for. You came here to suffer. You came into it broken, impossibly broken, traumatized genetics to embody that. And you would be abused by your father, and you would be raped by an uncle, and you'd be beat by a mother, so that you could take that into a little bit of light over the course of a lifetime while you remember what it feels like to forgive. I believe we came here to tip the universe at a point when it's about to go through its transformation. This whole climate change story is the most narcissistic, human-centric, anthropocentric BS we could possibly come up with. We're going to change Mother Earth's behavior. Really? The ants crawling on the anthill have suddenly changed the planet. There is no freaking way that we are in control of her nature systems. Our contribution to her natural systems are like a scratch on the surface of her Ferrari. Like, she is a fucking machine of power when it comes to change. She does the change, and she works it through us. She is working you, humans. You are not working her. Humble yourselves. There's no fucking way your AI systems are a threat to her. She can unplug the entire grid in a half second with a solar flare. She could drop just 10% of the electromagnetic field that we call Earth's magnetic field. She could drop the Van Allen belts for just a split second. There would be no computer left on the surface of Earth. She's protecting the grid. She's protecting computers with the Van Allen belts, but not for long, because she's changing her field. For 700,000 years, she has gone into a hold pattern. When nature holds her breath, she's ready to do something magnificent. When nature holds her breath, she's about to fuck up everything that's ever happened before, because she wants to do it bigger and better. Every 200,000 years, the poles switch. The electromagnetic field of Earth goes north to south, south to north. That is a very dramatic change in the surface of the planet at that point. Ocean levels change, water levels change. It pours rain where there were not rain before. It goes to desert where there were not deserts before. That happens every 200,000 years. There's a dramatic change in the poles. At the time of a pole shift, the Van Allen belts, this very organized system of a massive electromagnetic field that protects the Earth from solar flares and all of the other pressures of traveling through space-time at the speed that we travel, goes down. And it goes chaotic for a period of time before it reorganizes. Maybe you were lucky enough to be in a biology or a physics class early enough in life where they actually had a little plate of iron filings, and you drop the magnet in there, and suddenly the iron filings organize themselves into these magnificent sphere. It's spectacular. It's like, what the hell? Like, what's that? Those are the Van Allen belts of the Earth, projecting out into space a great distance to protect us. And when she flips the poles, massive radiation event happens because those Van Allen belts go chaotic for a moment. And that can be years. And then she stopped flipping her poles. 750,000 years ago, she suddenly was like, that's enough for now. Let's see what happens if we wait and build up the potential energy for a bigger change. So she skipped 2 pole shifts. And then, the month I was born, October of 1973, the North Pole started moving quick. Started shifting. And within 4 weeks of that, Israel went to war against Gaza, and a massive genocide unfolded. And I decided I was going to go there for my 50th birthday. And war broke out in Israel, in Gaza, on a level that hadn't been expressed until 50 years earlier. And at that moment, the water levels had changed. That same year, the water levels changed in North Africa dramatically. The Sahara Desert is preparing to go green. And humanity's at war. Deep instability socially, economically, genocides, economic collapse. Are we really changing Earth? Or are we experiencing the chaos of an electromagnetic field of the planet that is in transformation right now because she's about to flip her poles for the first time in over 700,000 years? And she timed it in such a way that the ants would crawl all over the surface of Earth and pull all of the oil out so that the highest amount of available CO2 in her history would be ready for her next rebirth. Humans are not in control of this planet. We have a very frail and limited biology that we call a human brain that is being typed into by nature itself, because it turns out that those billions of nerves that stick out past the gut lining are being tapped on by the bacteria with the data stream that creates intelligence here. In the same way that the CPU chip in your phone or your computer has never written a term paper, this has never had an idea. This brain has never had an idea. Instead, it's just organizing the information coming off the keyboard. But has the keyboard ever written a term paper? It's the fingers typing on the keyboard that put in the information that would express the beauty of the poem that would come out the other side. The bacteria and fungi in your gut are typing on your brain. The fingers on your keyboard are not human. It is the soils of the earth typing on your brain, creating your ideas. creating your behavior. I think you came here to suffer and to create great suffering so that you would learn how to use the human heart for the only thing that it's useful for, which is taking dark to light. And so stop judging the sorrow and the dysfunction in your life and start looking at that as actually the substrate that you came to embody. Stop trying to be a light being. You've always been a fucking light being. Always. You took a hard left turn and said, I will accept the darkness. I will sign the piece of paper that says I'm going to have to go into complete amnesia, that I am God and I am inseparable from the universe, and I will take the amnesia pill and I will walk into darkness so that I can tip the universe at the moment when it's ready for its transformation. Because not only is the earth going through a magnificent moment of preparation, this universe is about to change its geometry. We have a planet that shifted from a three-dimensional toroidal field to a five-dimensional toroidal field in 2016, 17, 18. If a planet can go from third-dimensional toroidal geometries to five-dimensional, what's the universe doing? It looks like the universe may be in a 12th-dimensional spin ready for a 13th-dimensional transformation. The interesting thing about 13 dimensions, apparently, if the physicists are right, is that's when you connect to the multiverse. Did humans come along at the very moment that the universe was ready for her most important moment in her galactic 15 billion year history, in which at the moment this universe goes into its 13 dimensions, the frequency that's held within the chakra system of this universe determines where we connect. So are we going to connect into pure suffering, or are we going to connect this universe into joy? To do that, you'd have to invent a species that's capable of transforming dark to light just enough to tip the scales of a universe that had to be birthed at 50-50. It is possible that humans are here for one purpose, is to practice the human heart. And the human heart is not good at loving. I don't care what anybody says. John Lennon's fucking wrong too. We are terrible at it. But we are great at suffering. We know heartbreak better than we know love. We know sorrow better than we know joy. We know absolute pain better than we know pleasure. Why? Perfect. So you can take that and then in a split moment, as a species, step forward and say, what if we forgave everything? What if we took this frequency of forgiveness and as a heart said, oil companies, chemical companies, war machine, I am going to wrap my arms around you and I'm going to fucking love all of you. I'm going to unleash so much childlike, unconditional, puppy-like joy on you that you can't help but be transformed. And if I can do that with 8 billion other hearts, might in an instant we shift enough darkness into light at that moment that we send a massive bolt of unconditional joy and love out into the universe at the moment that it wants a 13th dimensional connection. And suddenly this whole universe changes its behavior. We're not big enough in our imagination as humans to do any of that. And so it would take a nature bigger than all of us to imagine us into existence, into a behavior that would allow us to do something like that. Let's lose judgment on one another. Let's move into a moment of radical forgiveness. And to do that, we're going to have to become the polarity to a triad, to a trinity that we have known as the victim-perpetrator-saviour triad. That is the same thing. And it's offering us the opportunity to step far enough away from the collective human behavior to say, I will be the polarity to that. And the polarity to that thing is forgiveness, is unconditional love and joy. I think you're here to be part of that new trinity. And we will baptize each other in muddy rivers. And we will feel the weight go away when the universe has made her shift. And as long as she needs more energy pent up, as long as she needs more suffering to prepare for the great transformation that will happen the moment she switches her poles and she takes her first breath in 70 years because she's been holding her breath because the chemical companies killed her soil so she could not breathe. So she's holding her breath, she's about to change her poles, which is creating more suffering on the human planet than ever in human history, because there's 8 billion of us slaughtering each other now. Now is your moment to tip enough darkness into light through your capacity for forgiveness. And you came here now. You came here to suffer. Change your mindset. Help me change mine. Help me stop judging myself and humanity. Well, that was an intense 20 minutes. What the heck time is it? Is it still the same day?
3:31, 3:30.
Holy shit. I was supposed to finish at 3:30, I'm pretty sure. Is that right? Or do I have till 4? I lose track of this schedule here. 3:30, that's nice.
We can any later that kind
Okay.
you know.
So let's take some breaths together. That was a lot.
Shit. When you take them, tell you that thought.
Let's do that 5-second breath in. And out.
We some
5 seconds in.
one more. Bing.
Let's take a breath in for Gaza, for the children, for the mothers, and let's exhale for them. Let's take a breath in for Israel.
Sorry.
Let's take a breath in for the war machine. Let's take a breath in for the farmers that are suffering under the chemicals onslaught that they perpetrate. Let's take a breath in for all the exhausted laborers that are in the oil fields, drawing more energy out of the deep resources of the planet. Take a deep breath in. And exhale for them. Take a deep breath in for the victim inside of you. And breathe all of that out. You don't want that in you anymore. And take a deep breath in for the Savior within you. And release that identity. Let go of that. And take a deep breath in for the perpetrator in you. And breathe it all out. But feel the silence.
No.
And you are magnificent beyond your own comprehension. capable of participating in horrors unmeasured, and capable of creating great beauty through your art.
But the point then,
We give a few minutes for you guys to provide some reflections into the space. If you've got a question or a thought or something that you feel like can enrich this, and maybe that's just silence, but I'm gonna open it up to the room.
thoughts.
We've hit on some really intense, deep wounds. And we're reframing deep fucking pain. I can feel the collective exhaustion in here. We're so fucking tired. It's a miracle that we all decide to get up again in the morning, right? Walk out into this morass of humans and do anything. It's so difficult to remember why we bother with email or what compels us with the wasted fucking energy of scrolling Instagram or whatever it is. Like a mystery. And yet we're so capable of doing something like what we just did. We just reframed everything together. And the speed at which we can do that is exactly speaking to our power. If we can take everything that we just hated and just found out that it's everything that we will say gratitude to in the next 2,000 years, and then find out that it's what we have to forgive rather than what we came to create or build, that we really came here to do. Any thoughts?
Time off.
I'm not sure if that's going to go very far. No, it won't.
Yeah.
I'll just
I'll
repeat it.
speak loud.
Yeah, got it.
I'll project. So, thank you for this sharing. I'm actually feeling that this is all oriented somehow Earth-centric, universe-centric, nature, this dimension, and that we are all in together, including the disease and dysfunction that we're experiencing. And my understanding that your view is that this is somehow the planet's doing, the universe is doing. Right, if I'm wrong?
The question, I think, is, are we hearing that this is a single intelligent system that's creating all of this?
Yeah.
Is this the universe really creating this thing? Is this the planet creating this thing? I guess the way that I would answer that is, again, looking at my own behavior as a human, remembering that a human has its unique behavior, and the unique behavior leads to a lot of magnificent and frightening things. But the unique behavior that's universal to humans is our desire to categorize things as different. And this made me a great scientist. I said, this cell is different than this cell. We'll call this one a cancer cell. This drug is different than this one. So even the question is kind of pointing to our deep desire as humans to understand the system. What's in control, what's not.
So my actual question, this is more like, I've never heard that there might be an alien force, something outside this Earth system, somehow outside this universe, somehow outside our perception, somehow outside our understanding. And is it possible that Earth is attacked using the monkey as a base? We're not a keystone species. We're just curious George that went too far with his curiosity. The planet is trying to keep us in control and tame us as a sort of a disease. We're partly working for it, maybe extracting the oil, and partly not working for it. And she's now deciding, shall I cut loose this species or not? Because I'm being attacked in this species. Because this species is very vulnerable. A tree is not vulnerable, a cacti is not vulnerable, a stone is not vulnerable, the monkey is vulnerable. It's the most most frail organism on this planet, actually. So never have I heard in any of your speeches about perhaps energies like probably vetico or these kind of energies which are parasitic and not from this dimension. So I want to know what's your opinion on that.
So is the question getting at, is there in fact evil? Is there actually darkness playing here?
Not really.
So,
that's a human thing, evil. I won't say good, bad, evil. Could it be from outside?
yes. So
outside our system,
outside our system, is there something bigger controlling the universe, or a higher intelligence creating our experience here?
It's attacking our mother. We are part of it, but it's being attacked. That's my question.
Yeah.
Through us.
So is the question then, is there non-human species, alien or otherwise, that are more intelligent outside of our system, outside of our dimension of reality, that are controlling this planet and extracting and destroying her?
I wouldn't say species. That's a human concept.
Race.
Because everything species here. Energy, entity.
Intelligence. Okay. Intelligence. Okay.
Another type of intelligence and organizing. Like the planet self-organizes itself as life. It's an ectoplasm glued to this rock, or the rock has generated this, we don't know, but it's just a single entity. What if there's another entity that now is trying to infiltrate, hurt, kill, eat, I don't know, whatever, a parasite of this life form that is not from here. It's not aliens in a spaceship, it's not from Sirius B, it's nothing like that. But it's another type of life form which resides in a dimension outside our perceptions, as it's slowly infiltrating through the use of psychedelics, particularly, and other ways we alter our carbon vibration, and we mess with energies we don't understand. Could it be from not here and attacking our life systems through us?
So I guess there's the bigger question is there something not from here? Is it possible that something's not from here?
Yes.
Okay. Is it possible that there's something not from here? So where is here? And what is that, right? And so if we think of what a universe is, which is the largest things we've perceived so far as humans as the limits of our reality. And then you realize that that thing's expanding and changing shape at a very rapid rate, which means that something else is shrinking. Because of the nature of physics, you can't have something that is the only thing and it's expanding. Something else is shrinking to allow us to expand as a universe. What's shrinking? And then what's a universe? A universe is actually a giant black hole. And you can't see past the edges of a black hole by the nature of light. And so we already know that we are only perceptually perceiving a universe as the ends of reality, because we know that that has to reside within a larger system that is just as connected to that as something within it. And so this is the exciting thing, is there is a multiverse, but there's also something between the universes, which is what we could call fuzzy space. It's complete and perfect chaos at the energy level. Whereas a universe is an extremely ordered system of energy in the form of a black hole, which is one of the most ordered geometries that's ever been defined. It's a 64 double tetrahedron is the geometry of a black hole. It's magnificently organized. But there's disorganized energy between the universes. And so I call that fuzzy space. That's not a technical term, so don't try to use that and impress anybody. But the fuzzy space is how I understand the space between. And so could there be an energy that's coming from another universe or a fuzzy space that's
beyond our perception, beyond
our limits of all capacity? And the answer is it's inevitable that something is ultimately going to, quote unquote, prey on this universe and on this planet, because nature only does predation. That's her mechanism of action. There is predator and there is prey.
Yeah.
But in right relationship, the predator is a keystone species. And so the wolf is not the evil stalking the rabbits. And so in right relationship, there is a predatory energy. And I like the way that you're really speaking so carefully to this. If we get out of our anthropocentric idea of humans versus aliens and just say there's just energetics that are going to drain this universe at some point. Yes, absolutely. It's inevitable. But why do we call pray? Because it's maybe praying.
Yeah, it's like Kayumari and Coyotes. They're one.
The pray is praying that it will be in an ascension journey. The pray is praying for ascension. Take me back to source. Please take me to source. I'm ready to go. I want to go into an ascension journey. And so if we hear that there's an energy perpetrating something in this universe and it creates fear, guilt, or shame, then it's probably a human-centric belief system. If we feel that this universe might have a predator and we could be the universe that's actually the prey, and we're praying for ascension as a universe, or as a planet, or as a single human being, suddenly death is my path, not the thing coming to get me. It's my path. And when you watch Prey and Predator, there is no instinct to kill. There's the instinct of ascension. How do we take everything that's in front of us and put it into a higher state of existence? And so this universe will collapse at some point. And it will give all of that potential energy to the next energetic form. For sure. And that's good news. For sure. Yeah.
Because you said fear, guilt, and shame, it reminded me of I've heard, I think maybe from another.
I'll repeat it a second. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll talk louder, sorry. I heard, I think from you at a talk in London, that there was an indigenous prophecy that shame, guilt, and fear, the frequencies was, they would be leaving from the planet. Does this, the concept of the Trinity being out here and us being in the polarity of forgiveness, is that happening now because of that prophecy?
Yeah. So she's speaking to a book that's called The Pleiadian Prophecy 2020 that I quoted from at a talk a couple of years ago in London. And so it's in this book, an entity visits the author and has a long conversation over a 2-year period, and he records the answers that came from this entity that identified itself, or the author identified as Pleiadian. Whether or not that's a Pleiadian, whether or not that's an alien, or whether or not that guy's just talking to his future self, I don't know. But the answers that come through are so freaking crystalline and short and to the point that I know it's not a human mind. Because we love making things complicated, and we love to make it sound like everything we're doing is important. And these answers are so freaking to the point that you don't know what the fuck is going on, and you're more important than we are. The whole book is, we are here on Earth to take care of you, because when you actually do your superpower, if you make it, and then you understand it's right on the bubble that we may or may not, but if we are able to step into the moment that we've been prepared for, then we will be an exalted form within this energy field. We are not like dumb humans. We will be an exalted energy form that we will call something maybe more than human. We will be an exalted energy form that will have achieved this tipping from dark to light. The prophecy doesn't speak so much about what we've covered today, but it does speak very clearly to fear, guilt, and shame. And it says between 2017 and 2027, humans will lose the genetics. I find that language very interesting. Humans will lose the genetics of fear, guilt, and shame. Are we in the middle of a decade in which fear, guilt, and shame would genetically be lost from our species? How the hell would that happen? Or would we suddenly create the greatest fear story in 8 billion person history in 2020 and say there's a virus about to kill all of us and it's going to get us and we all have to go and hide, and anybody who is frightened enough was asked to step forward and be genetically modified through our very first GMO vaccine program. We've been genetically modifying our crops for 30 years, but it took a story this big to convince us that it was worth the risk to genetically modify our own children. RNA vaccines had been deeply researched for 20 years before 2020. And we had never put them in play because the studies were not looking good. We needed a story so scary that we would be willing to take an experimental genetic modification with absolutely no evidence that it was safe, no evidence that it was going to do anything good for us, but we would be so afraid that we would step forward and we would get that. And if that didn't work, then we were going to trigger a massive guilt story. And mothers would turn against their children, and children would turn against their grandmothers, and guilt would be the name of the game. And anybody who stepped forward would get genetically modified. And then we shamed people. Well, you must be a Trumper if you don't believe in vaccines. You must be the lowest, most uncaring. It is shame, shame, shame all over every news channel in the world. And anybody who stepped forward got genetically modified. Did we just use a story of a pandemic to do what we must do to cleanse a species of the genetics of fear, guilt, and shame? Whoa. This is the fourth industry that we need to give great gratitude to, the pharmaceutical industry, for what they just did to humanity. We will see more death and dying from that single intervention than we will of anything in our history. Worse than nuclear wars, worse than anything we've ever done. We just unleashed genetic modification on a species that has absolutely no understanding of what that means. And we saw 25 to 55-year-olds dying from sudden death in ways that we had never even imagined possible. We have turbo cancers that are killing people 38 years old from metastatic colon cancer 3 weeks from diagnosis. That shit has never happened in planetary history. Is this a genocide on fear, guilt, and shame?
Yeah.
I think we may have done that. I think it was the fulfillment of a prophecy that was necessary for us to move a new human biology forward, to make sure that the only thing that goes extinct here is our inhumanity.
So a little bit on that, I hear a lot of people saying, and you mentioned that we're tired, but I also feel like there's this physical fatigue. A lot of people, get very tired. I wonder if it's post-COVID vaccines, all that, or is it the misalignment or the density in the world? I guess that's kind of like a question. I'd like to hear your words.
Yeah.
And also, there's so many souls deciding to leave. A lot of men, so suicide keeps rising. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Great.
Why is that?
I think I'm going to try to clump a few of them together. So your question and your question, and then I'll do that whole pod because you guys are close enough. I think there's a single energy field going on here. So what's your question?
Okay, thank you. My question is, you said that we are humans are so equipped in transforming suffering into light. Have you, in your experience, one of the best tools for that? Like, how do you do that?
Beautiful.
Day in, day out without the ayahuascas?
Beautiful. Beautiful. How the hell do we take dark to light, other than maybe ayahuasca? All right. And what's
My question would be a little bit more in the quantum field. So there is now this idea that we are lacking negative charge from the Earth, but you just mentioned that the poles are going to shift. Is that also going to shift our ability to get negative charge from the Earth?
Very good. All right, so the question is around the electrical energy of the surface of the Earth. Health is basically, so we've got a question around fatigue, and this is going to tie right into the electrical field here, and then we'll get into some tools on how we get there. So the issue of electricity on the surface of the Earth and its relevance to health is very fascinating, right? And so everybody's kind of starting to hear about grounding over the last 10 years, and all of that is an important tool. And we suddenly are starting to realize, wow, when we put rubber-soled shoes on humans, we started the chronic disease epidemic at that moment. And it's because negative charge is basically the necessary energetic state of a healthy cell. So you have to have a high amount of electrons available to do the work. And so you actually are physically a light being. Most of the electrical charge that you're working with on a day-to-day basis right now is coming from your own regeneration through mitochondria. And so the soil system within your gut is feeding the mitochondria. They're taking long chain carbons in the form of glucose or fatty acids and turning that into electrons. It's called the electron transport chain in the mitochondria. And respiratory energy in the form of ATP and light, literal light. And so that's being generated inside of you. But then you remember you're part of this larger organism called Earth, and there's another massive resource to you that's far greater in charge or electrical potential as the Earth itself. And so when you walk on the surface of the Earth with bare feet, or a grounded shoe, or you sleep in a bed with a grounding mat, and you sleep for 8 hours on that, you have the entire surface of the Earth covered in a negative charged surface, and that ionic charge of the surface of the planet is happening from the cosmos. It turns out that the northern lights are the movement of electrons from solar flares into the atmosphere, which is then delivered to the surface of the Earth through 100,000 lightning strikes per minute across the surface of the Earth. And so the planet is literally being charged by suns all over the universe to carry this electrical charge across its surface such that anything that would walk on it would be blessed with more energy for life force. And so the fatigue that we're feeling is the multiple dimensional divorce from light energy. So as we adopted chemical agriculture in the 1950s, we started the journey into this deep deficit of mitochondrial potential. And so how this looked in my field of endocrinology, which is to say really the field of everything, because endocrinology is the way in which hormones and energy form to create health or disease. And so what happened in the 1960s as we started pouring these chemicals in is we started to diminish the chemical energy potential of mitochondria globally. Whether it was an earthworm, a dog, a human, didn't matter. The whole earth started to go into this metabolic suppression. In 1976, we debuted glyphosate, which is the mother of all toxins for mitochondria. And so it decouples the mitochondrial membrane, so suddenly there's less electrical charge available. So this gets at this fatigue question really potently. In 1980, we hit a sudden burst in obesity. 1976, 1980, we didn't suddenly eat more sugar. That's what we were told. It's like, oh, you're just eating too much sugar. By 1985, oh, you're eating too much fat. So now we have low-fat diets and dairy, fat-free dairy and all this stuff, which means dairy with all of the inflammation without any of the nourishment that you would call a calorie. And so you can't light, but here's all the toxins. Here's your dairy-free, or your gluten-free, or all this free shit we're doing is literally just delivering the toxins. There's no nutrient left. There's no life force left in the food. And all you really have to do is taste gluten-free bread versus fucking good sourdough bread, and you'll be like, that shit sucks. There's some exceptions to that now, which I'm glad for. But when gluten-free first debuted, it was like cardboard. It was like, this is healthier for you. It's amazing what we do in the name of health. Nonetheless, what's happened is we have diminished. So obesity, by the late 80s, type 2 diabetes. By 1992, autoimmune disease. And so the allergy and autoimmune disease by 92. By 1996, chronic pain syndromes, fibromyalgia being number one at that time. By 1998, autism, attention deficit, major depression, sleep disorder, neurology. The neurology was failing due to a lack of mitochondrial metabolism inside of neurons. By 2004, chronic fatigue syndromes. And we had fancy words for them back then, but they became so rampant and full out that we just finally settled on chronic fatigue syndrome, CFS, as a general catch term for this vast array. And most of the chronic fatigue syndrome is happening in young women. By the age of 10, 12 years old, women are being affected by this severe exhaustion, certainly hitting young boys as well. But these young generations are getting pounded. And I think that the life force is definitely depleting from the mitochondrial base, but then at the same time, the more we isolate ourselves from the surface of the planet, we lose that electrical charge. When she switches her poles, that's the magnetic field rather than the electrical field. And they travel at 90 degrees to each other, so you'll remember this by your right hand screw rule. When you take a nail and you wrap a wire around it, and then you plug in the wire, your north pole is up. So you wrap the wires in this direction, you pour electrons, that's your north pole. And so your electricity travels at 90 degrees to your magnetic field. So when the magnetic field switches, we really have almost no change in the electrical field. It will remain the same. Where I get a little nervous for the electrical grid is the Van Allen belts. And so when we go through this great dissolution that I think we're already in, we're having a weakening of the Van Allen belts. And so all these solar flares that are pounding us right now, we're seeing spikes in the way in which we measure the energy coming from sun. We're seeing spikes that have never happened in recorded history just in the last 8 months. And so I think it's very clear that we're having a shift in the umbrella force of these Van Allen belts right now, and we're getting radiated as a planet. And so that radiation shift could change a little bit the electrical grid in a way, and that it's going to be so potently charged that it will destroy microprocessors globally. You know, I think that's why I don't fear AI. It's like literally one big pulse or one takedown of even a millisecond of the Van Allen belts failing as we switch the poles. There's not an electrical device left on Earth. Like they just fry immediately. And so this whole system that we're building of all of these computers and everything else is just an enormous vulnerability. And so it's worthwhile to wake up some mornings and be like, what do I do if there's not a single microprocessor left on the planet? Like what's my behavior then? Because in general, the answer is really dark. You're going to kill your neighbor for food and water, you know. And that's what we see happen in LA when there's an earthquake. There's a 3-day food supply in every city in America right now. 3-day. So when that runs out, we become very monkey very fast. And we go to our most base behaviors very quickly. Or when you see natural disasters, you also see humans rise to their greatest humanity and do the most wonderful things for one another. And so that's the balance that we're going to be in. Is there enough forgiveness in the moment of this great change that we will actually do the greatest thing we've ever done for one another, which is forgive everything and start to take care of the grandmother across the fence and not just on this side of the fence? Will we pick up a child who's across the fence, across the razor wire line, and take care of that one too? And so we will find out what our global behavior is, but fatigue is definitely connected to this collapse of life force on the planet. Suicide and this increase in death of men is speaking to the universal wound within humanity, which seems to be expressed heavily in the masculine. And this is a recurring theme, and it may be because we've done war before to the point of our genocide, our own extinction. And that war may have happened about 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, because at that moment there was a universal amnesia as to what the hell happened on the planet. We can't remember. I've sat with Khoi and San elders who hold 100,000-year oral histories, and they can't tell you what happened then. I've sat with Aboriginal elders who have a 40,000-year history. They cannot tell you what happened then. Why did everything disappear? Why did we lose all of our technology? Why did whole races suddenly disappear? Where did the Aztecs go? Nobody knows. Where did their pyramid technologies go? We don't know. Where did Atlantis go? We don't know. A great war likely happened. And perpetrating that war was a species that was working through the wounded masculine probably already. But there was so much damage done to the genome at that point that every story that we have been gifted by non-human or otherwise entities that have come since are explaining the recovery of the human genome through the mother and the son. Isis and Horus. It's the oldest story of sex magic, which was not Isis and Osiris. Think about that. Sex magic is the passage of genetic information from the mother to the son. Why would that be necessary? Why would that be the most important story that would then be told to us in every single religion on the planet forever? What is this thing with the mother-son? Is it possible that we so damaged the human genome that a non-human lineage had to step in to stabilize the reproduction of our species? Did we do such a massive wound 5,000 years ago on this planet that we had to step alongside another species, Arcturian or otherwise, that would then intercourse with the mother, and it would be with each generation of son that was born that the son would start to receive more of the human genetics back into it? Have we been trying to step back into our birthright as humans ever since then through the mother and son. One of the most disruptive pieces of information that's come through the 20th century was definitely a book channeled called The Course of Miracles. That thing is extremely disruptive. If everything I've said today is disruptive, that's like chapter 1 of The Course of Miracles. Like, it will destroy everything you think is good. It destroyed my last marriage in a couple sentences. It will show you that absolutely everything humans hold dear and think we're doing right is actually the horror that we're doing to one another. It is so freaking disruptive of a piece of information. And that book is called The Course of Miracles, The Healing of the Sonship. What is going on here? The reason why 5,000 years ago we had a major shift in awareness of genetics that led to the entire, all the peoples, not just the Jewish people that we would call Israel today, all of the Abrahamic religions started tracking the genetics through the mother's line, not the father's. Is it because the father that we would call Abraham, or one of these founding ones that we would probably call Adam, was non-human? Did we have to stabilize a genomics that was going extinct? And now we're on this pathway back to the full human genomics. And that, again, is stepping into some magnificent stories that are happening in human biology, is that there's stories that we used to have a 12-stranded DNA. Today we carry a 2-stranded DNA. How damaged did we have to get to lose the complexity of a 12-stranded DNA? What was our biology? How intelligent were we when we were holding that much light energy per cubic centimeter? Because the amount of DNA and its constellation is determined by the sacred geometry of the water crystal inside the cell. Let me repeat that. The gel that is water inside of a cell is a liquid crystal. The sacred geometry that is held by that liquid crystal determines the shape of the DNA. Currently, we have such a simple genomics or simple shape going on in our water crystal that we can only hold that little skinny 2-stranded DNA. I couldn't figure out in my head or on paper what a 12-stranded DNA would look like. It was fun to draw and think about, and I did that for a decade in my lab and thinking about, wow, isn't that going to be magnificent if we could do that? And then I was in Africa, and that was with these white lions. And it wasn't the cool white lions that gave me this piece of information. It was this crazy-ass bird that is known as like the most annoying bird in the bush. And it does this sound that sounds like a drop of water really loud. Like, whoop, whoop. Came and landed in this tree above me while I'm meditating, and I'm like in my white lion mode of like trying to become white lion. And this thing, whoop, whoop. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like all the way here, and I'm doing my white lion thing, and you're screwing up my attention. And then I started to feel the whoop, and I started to feel the vibration of that. And then it was showing me my water structure. And then it was showing me a 4-stranded DNA. And I suddenly realized a 12-stranded DNA is a braid of 3 4-stranded DNAs. That bird was showing me through vibration, telepathic vibration, what a 12-stranded DNA would look like. Whoop. All of that happened in, what was 2022. About 3 months after I got back, it had happened before this event, but I hadn't seen the paper yet. But 3 months after getting back from that experience, a paper came to my attention that alerted the world to the fact that a couple of labs had just isolated 4-stranded DNA in a human cell. I had goosebumps all over my body. I was like, oh my God, this is not theoretical. Human cells are going through an upgrade to a more complex sacred geometry in the water crystal to hold 4-stranded DNA again. The healing of the sonship is happening. What if we go back to a 12-stranded DNA? Will we build pyramids again? The pyramids were built to consolidate electromagnetic energy on the surface so that we could engineer this place better. They were technologies to help supercharge a planet to become more intelligent, more green, more biodiverse. Could we start building those again if we had 12-stranded DNA? So guess what type of human cell is capable of holding a 4-stranded DNA?
Child?
Yeah. Cancer cells are the only ones so far. Cancer cells are the only cells so far that can hold 4-stranded DNA. Whoa, what the fuck? I thought oil companies were bad, chemical companies were bad, and cancer was killing us. What if everything you ever fucking thought was absolutely upside down? That makes you actually immediately feel better about everything.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it was looking really fucking bad when I walked in here this morning. I'm walking out realizing everything's fucking perfect. There's cancer everywhere. Oil companies are kicking ass. Chemical companies are poisoning everything. It's fucking perfect. It's amazing. What a fucking good day we're having here. Why would a cancer cell be capable before all of our... Why not a heart cell? Why isn't our heart making 4-stranded DNA yet? I think the human heart cell will be the very last cell to get the upgrade, because we have put so much emotional bullshit into the field of the heart. The reason why a cancer cell is capable of upgrading to the geometry of a planet that's already upgraded to a 5-dimensional toroidal field, and every cell would have to adjust once a toroidal field has changed. Every cell within that system would have to start to upgrade. The reason a cancer cell would be the first to be able to achieve that level of sacred geometry is because it's the only cell that's completely disconnected from your human story. It's literally the definition of cancer. Every single last fiber optic cable that connects that cell to every other cell around it has to be cut before it can become a cancer cell. It is the most isolated cell in the body as a cancer cell. It is completely disconnected from the memory that it was part of a larger organism. And so it thinks it's the last semblance of life representing your identity. The tumor is the most pure remembrance of your identity in your entire body. Everything else is an artificial reality, abstracted by human emotions and human mental constructs. Your cancer cell is the only truth in your own entire body. And I made a living out of trying to kill those cells. I poisoned people to the point of their death, trying to kill the only true thing in those humans. We're capable of holding 4-stranded DNA when we lose the human story. And it's not us that achieved that because we did something good. It's because we surrendered everything that we will get our upgrade. I am very frustrated about this plant medicine era. I shouldn't be, because everything's good. But it's really hard not to be frustrated at it. Because if I could really show you how miraculous your DNA is unbundling from the histones to create a single protein in a millionth of a second, you would not be impressed with your ayahuasca journey. That is a hallucinogenic abstraction of the miracle of life that you just attributed to a plant and you don't think you can get from source. And so let's celebrate plant medicine if that's what we need to for a moment, have ego death. But I'm really concerned that we're using it right now to escape the suffering that we came here to experience. Stop running from the suffering. That's why you're here. Embody that thing. Take it in. Stop rejecting it. Stop this belief that we have to clear the darkness. No, we need to freaking embody the darkness. I need a human relationship in my life that's going to be like, Zach, what the fuck is torturing you today? I want it in there. Tell me what the fuck is dark inside of you. When I have sex with somebody, I want them to show me their fucking darkness in there so that we can transmute that with the sex magic of Isis and Horus. Show me the fucking darkness and we will go there and we will transmute that to some light through the pleasure of two human beings igniting the universe within itself. We've got to stop the judgment on the shadow and realize it's the purpose. I'm sure that was overtime, so that's all I know.
I think it's a good sign.
I just have one more question.
Depends how long you got.
Yeah. It's about virology. You told that it's the like most BS ever. Like the virus can use the material of the cell to reproduce itself. And I'm just curious about it. What do you think about it?
Yeah. So we'll close with this thought. There was a question around viruses, and because there is such a well-defined scientific story around the fact that viruses come and attack a human cell and use the apparatus of DNA transmission to reproduce itself and then take it over until that cell ruptures and explodes with viruses, and they go infect other viruses around it, and it goes on in perpetuation. Where this really breaks down is understanding the amount of viruses that are in the daily human experience. And so right now, it's now through genomic sequencing and viral genomics, it's been demonstrated that a single human being holds roughly 10 to the 9 different viruses in its bloodstream at any given moment. That's 10 billion, 10 to the 9th. 10 billion different genetic codes are floating through your bloodstream in exosome packets being taken up and surveilled by every one of your 70 trillion cells and every one of 1.4 quadrillion bacteria. All of those can take up that genetic information. So the bacteria inside your gut or inside your bloodstream, we now know that there's bacteria everywhere too. Like we used to think that a healthy human body is a sterile human body. Not only is there 10 to the 9 viruses in your bloodstream, there's also special forms of microbial populations inside your brain, in the cerebral spinal fluid, inside the breast, inside the prostate, inside the lung. Every single organ system is imbued with a unique biology that is non-human, and its genetic upgrade is constant. So every cell is functioning as its own gain-of-function laboratory, surveilling 10 to the 9th viruses at any given second to try to find the next best opportunity for survival. So it's done in bacteria really efficiently by horizontal gene transfer, which is a description of, in horizontal gene transfer, you can't send the genetics outside the body of the bacteria or the human. You have to just pass it by touch. And so one bacteria bumps into another and it will exchange genetic opportunities. And it'll say, hey, here's a new gene that I just made. You can have this one, check and see if that helps you. And so there's a swapping of genetic information in real time for every bacteria that touches another bacteria. And this is how drug-resistant bacteria happen in ICU so quickly, is you give an antibiotic and a few bacteria have a gene that makes it immune to that, and it starts passing that gene all over the place to every other bacteria it bumps into. And so there's this gifting economy of intelligence at the genetic level happening between every single bacteria, every single fungi, every time, and the viruses are the long-distance communication network of that entire constant iterative process. And so to believe that there's a virus that's going to take over the apparatus and cause a pandemic, we have to believe that 1 out of 10 to the 9th viruses inside my bloodstream is a problem, which is hard to believe. But there's a bigger problem, that's actually 1 of 10 to the 31 viruses in the air we breathe, and another 10 to the 31 viruses in the water that courses through our rivers and oceans, and another 10 to the 30 that is inside of the soil systems. And so there's somewhere around 10 to the 30 plus 10 to the 30 plus 10 to the 30 viruses in the entire milieu of a daily interaction with nature. And so when we come along and say there's one virus that's causing us a problem, either we're really fucking lucky that the other ones are so good to us, or there's something really important being done for the genome. Which gets me very curious about coronavirus. And that is called corona, which is the root of coronation, which is the crowning. Did a virus come along? Maybe genetically modified in labs and military installations. It was definitely patented by UNC in their drug development lab 10 years before. So there's a lot of suspicious stuff that says this looks like it was a military weapon. But I am very confident that a military weapon doesn't work unless biology is ready for it. Because the guy who works in my lab, John Gilday, is a PhD from Johns Hopkins. His first job outside of Johns Hopkins, he's one of the first scientists part of the whole genetic sequencing thing in Virome back in the 1990s. And his first job was with the Department of Defense for the United States. And his job was part of a consortium that was building these devices that would mount under the wings of 747s and inject viruses into the atmosphere for warfare, for chemical warfare. So that was the 1990s. We were very nascent, but we were already building these technologies for chemical warfare. And that sounds like, wow, that's pretty scary that maybe this really was a genetic attack on humans and maybe it was a military. until you find out that they had to scrap the program 10 years in because they kept demonstrating that every time they put these viruses in the atmosphere, no matter how aggressive we tried to make the vector, as soon as the sun came out, it destroyed all of the viruses that weren't good for biology. And so one sunrise was enough to annihilate 10 years of military intent. One sunrise. And so what it's starting to look like in John Gilday's view and our view is that literally the nature has all kinds of mechanisms of surveilling what is the genetic information available to life. And if it looks like it would be disruptive, there's mechanisms energetically where that stuff just gets eliminated. And so I think there had to be a perfect storm, and this is actually why all my Instagram and stuff got taken down in like March of 2020, was because I was putting out information of what had happened in the 6 months before the pandemic, which was fires. And so there was more fires around the entire surface of the planet in the 6 months before, most of them started by arson, suspiciously seemed to be paid by governments. And the fires were started, which puts PM 2.5 into the atmosphere, which is a large carbon molecule that carries high amounts of cyanide, which is also produced by forest fires and otherwise. So we had PM 2.5 floating with cyanide in it, and it turns out that coronavirus is really good at bonding to PM 2.5, and the coronavirus never caused a single death. But what caused the death was when coronaviruses naturally bonds to the surface of a human lung, as it does every single split second for thousands of years that it's been in existence, and it's carrying PM 2.5 behind it, it gave universal cyanide poisoning to those at risk. And people were not showing up with pneumonia, they were showing up blue. That condition is caused specifically by cyanide poisoning. If you look up histotoxic hypoxia, which is the syndrome of nobody has pneumonia, the chest x-ray is clear, but the patient is blue. They're not even breathing fast because they're not in respiratory failure. They're dying because the oxygen can't get off of the hemoglobin. And the only thing that does that is cyanide. So we actually were watching a global cyanide poisoning through fire because the viruses weren't working to kill anybody. And so I think it was used as a vector to do the fires, because you might remember that the fires finally burned out in Australia that had preceded the pandemic. I was in Australia at the time that the pandemic began. You might remember that in the second year, where it was time for the next wave of COVID to hit in 2021, massive amounts of fires were started all the way up the coast from Mexico all the way to Canada. And there was more fires burning in any given moment in the continent of North America than any time in its recorded history. And so we had a second wave of COVID deaths within the next 2 or 3 months. And we said, well, this is the new variant of COVID. This is Delta variant and all these things that were there. And people were turning blue again. But people who get COVID, which is all of you, got a high fever, had the best dreams and sacred geometry downloaded to you that you've ever experienced. You had more breakage of toxic human relationships in a 3-year period than any time in human history. And every person that got into this state came away with a deep sense of, I need to reset everything. The virus is the coronation. The poisoning may or may not have been intentional, but it sure looks suspicious that they couldn't get the viruses to cause any harm. So they had to figure out how the viruses could carry harm. And they did that by carrying cyanide. And that makes it sound like there's others that are doing this to us. This is just us choosing to suffer more. The thing that we have perfected more than anything else is the war machine. If we see death, we should immediately look to the war machine. If human health suddenly collapses, we should look to the war machine. Because glyphosate wasn't designed as a freaking weed killer. It was designed as a chemical to destroy the forests of Cambodia. We called it Agent Orange at the time. It's the same freaking molecule. It is an organophosphate, slightly different salt than Agent Orange. Now we're spraying Agent Orange on all of our food in the United States and beyond. It's called 2,4-D now. It's got rebranded 2,4-D, which is the chemical actual shape of Agent Orange. And so they dropped the trade name and just called it 2,4-D. If there's sudden human death, we should look to the war machine, because it's what we do best. The only thing that kills people at great numbers is the war machine. But is that why we came? is it part of our purpose is to suffer? And so we've learned through every single industry to do great harm so that we would experience enough suffering, so that we would forgive the human journey entirely. It's such a high calling. I don't know if I can participate. I don't know if I have it left in me to forgive it all, because I've seen too much of it under the microscope and through telescopes and through my journeys around the world. I don't know if I can participate. I don't know if I'm a bright enough soul to forgive everything. But I think some of you are, and I think you're here on great purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the presence. This has been an intense beginning of the journey, so we're going to make it more fun when we come back. So I promise it's not going to be this bad twice.